So the Eagles have to wait a day to find out who they play in the next round. The Detroit Lions do not. They know they've got the upstart Washington Commanders after another frantic, nail-biting, dramatic finish. What else would we expect from the Commanders? They bank shot their way into the divisional round at Raymond James Stadium. Zane Gonzalez's 37-yard field goal at the buzzer. It doinks, it hits the upright, and it banks in. And that is how the Washington Commanders down the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 23-20. As of yet, the only upset by seeding in the playoffs so far this year. The Texans were a point spread underdog, but they were obviously the home team and the higher seed. This is the first true upset of these 2024 playoffs. Jayden Daniels and the Commanders sneaking past the Bucs. We're going to talk about this with an assist from our friend Greg Auman of FoxSports.com, who's there at Raymond James Stadium right now. And Greg, so much to dive into here, but I think what I'm going to remember when I think about this game is that the team with the rookie quarterback made the clutch plays that they had to have in the fourth quarter. And unfortunately, the home team with the very veteran quarterback made a couple of really untimely mistakes that ultimately led to their undoing here.
Yeah, I mean, Washington has absolutely made their season on late game wild finishes like this. I think it's 5 games in a row now. They've won on the last play. And you can't get more down to the wire than this. Like you said, Jayden Daniels kind of unflappable. Just did everything right. Last drive, made the plays, got the last run himself to kind of clinch, being able to run out the clock and kick to end the game. And played a great game. He's tough, man. You think about fourth down, I think so much of this was Washington being such a really good fourth down team all year. And then going forward, converting 3 in tonight's win. It matches the most in a playoff win in NFL history. 3 fourth down conversions contributed to both of their touchdowns for sure.
That is a phenomenal visual here. Is on the surface, you got Todd Bowles and you got Dan Quinn. They're both defensive guys. I think the average person would say that they're going to skew conservative. And there was Dan Quinn trying it on fourth down 5 times in this game. They got turned away in the red zone a couple times, was not deterred at all. And I find it really refreshing, especially from a defensive coach, to be willing to dance with the partner that got him to this stage. And that's what it seemed like Dan Quinn was willing to do. Even though Jayden Daniels is a rookie, he is the best thing about this football team. And kudos to Dan Quinn for recognizing that he should have the ball in his hands as often as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I asked Dan Quinn where their confidence comes from to go for it on fourth down as much as they do. And he said a lot of it is 5. It's Jayden Daniels and knowing with the ball in his hands between his legs and his arms, he can do so many things to make plays. And that was it. I mean, the poor Bucs defense, they get a stop on 4th and goal, immediately have the ball turned back over. And again, it comes down to it. And they made a play and made a touchdown. I mean, it's one of those things where he's done it all season. Regular season, Washington was 20 of 23 on fourth down, 87%, easily the best in the NFL. So again, you feel bad for the Bucs. Bucs may not go 3 for 5 today, 60%. That's a win compared to most opponents. And it still was what did them in.
It reminds me a little bit of the Eagles of past years. And obviously the Commanders don't do the brotherly shove or anything as dramatically as the Eagles. In fact, apparently Marcus Mariota is their short yardage guy at this point, but it's just got to be demoralizing to know that getting a third down stop is probably not going to be good enough. We said that about the brotherly shove for a couple years, where if they get to 4th and 1, maybe even 4th and a short 2, you're not getting off the field. And that felt like something that weighed heavily in this game too, where I really thought with everything, if you consider all angles, even though they didn't force a punt, I thought the Tampa Bay defense played a nice all-around game, but it's hard to get these guys off the field. And even when you do, they're going to come right back at you.
Yeah. I mean, Bucs defense, you feel bad. I mean, the touchdown they gave up late was on a ball where Washington got the ball in the red zone. It's really hard to defend such a short field. But it's one of those where, by the numbers, Bucs didn't go for it as much. Their first drive, fourth down, the Bucs took a field goal. had a chance to take the field goal off the board, go for it on 4th and 2, and they didn't. You know, even after that disastrous 2-play sequence, it's 4th and 3 at the 12. They could have gone for it there and tried to take the lead, and instead they took a field goal to tie it, put the ball in Jayden Daniels' hands with 5 minutes to go, and that's what happened. So it's one of those where you understand why you're conservative. You understand why you take a field goal to tie the game with 5 minutes left. That's the smart play, to trust that your defense can off the field. This was not a game where you wanted to give the ball to Jayden Daniels with the game on the line in the last 5 minutes of the game.
So we talk about that. I mean, Kalijah Cansey looked like he had him dead to right on the 3rd and 2 with a minute to play, and he just easily snakes his way out of that, gets the first down. Couple minutes before that, I thought his completion to Austin Eckler that looked like it went through Yaya Diaby's like elbow crook was just a phenomenal play that could have swung this game. So Jayden makes the plays he needs to make, and you just kind of touched on it. Baker Mayfield and Jalen McMillan fumble an exchange on an end around that leads to a Washington touchdown. And if that's not bad enough, it really felt like Tampa Bay had control of this thing. 3rd and 1, 12-yard line, little under 5 minutes to play. Bucky Irvin's been running the ball well all night. It looks like you're going to pick this up, and you're either going to bleed 2 more minutes off the clock before you kick a field goal, or you're going to bleed 2 more minutes off the clock and score a touchdown, and now you're really in business. And obviously there's a miscue with the cadence. I saw afterward Graham Barton took responsibility for that, but for as many veteran pieces as there are on this offense, and I know Graham Barton is a rookie, but it seems like something that's going to sting for a long time with the Buccaneers, that something so simple played such a huge role in why they ultimately kicked that field goal and never got the ball back.
Yeah, and it's one of those where the Bucs have gotten so many big contributions from rookies all year. Those 2 fourth quarter plays, Jalen McMillan's a rookie, and for whatever reason they timed that wrong in that jet sweep and didn't make the handoff they needed and turn the ball over. Can't do that. Only turnover in the game against a defense that really doesn't force turnovers. It's just hugely costly to the outcome of the game. And then Graham Barton, who's had issues with penalties this year, but for the most part, has been a really solid center. Just snaps it a little early. The rest of the line isn't ready. It looks almost like an aborted play, and Bucky loses 2 yards, and that's just enough to where 4th and 3. Todd Bowles isn't confident going for it, especially after the last 2 plays in short yardage have failed, and they settle for a field goal, and that's what lost the game.
This isn't necessarily fair, but it's the nature of the beast. I mean, the Bucs just lose this game, their season's over. They lose to a rookie at home. Jayden Daniels is the first rookie to win a road playoff game since Russell Wilson in 2012. I think he's just the 4th rookie in the Super Bowl era to win a road playoff game. With all of that useful context, you and I have already talked about if there is an established coach, if there is a coach who's won back-to-back division titles, who doesn't have fantastic job security, it's probably Todd Bowles. Another game where clock management decisions are going to weigh heavily, execution's going to weigh heavily. Offensive coordinator Liam Cohen's presumably a name to know in the hiring cycle that's going to get going here. Is this the type of game that could cost Todd Bowles his job? I guess if I want to be direct, that's the question worth asking.
I don't think so. I don't think you fire a coach after 3 division titles, even if this was a disappointing loss at home. They have 1 playoff win in 3 seasons, so that's disappointing. But they've had a better record every year. They pushed through a lot of injuries tonight. They finished the game down a corner again. For whatever reason, and it's one of those where you hit that. There's a gray area where it can be really hard sometimes to be good and not great consistently. Bucs have made the playoffs 5 years in a row. They've won the division 4 years in a row. They've never had any run like that in their history. So it's hard to imagine firing a coach responsible for that, who's led that. But there's definitely people here in Tampa who would much rather see him go to make sure Liam Cohen stays. Offense, again, didn't really have a good game tonight. 284 yards, 20 points. Their lowest totals on both of those in 2 months. And again, a turnover late, a red zone miss late. Defense probably stepped up and overachieved tonight in terms of limiting Washington and what they did. I don't think they make a change here. I can see why people are clamoring for it and frustrated by the lack of postseason success or the lack of just more success beyond 10 wins this season.
I think this is one of those circumstances where everybody can be right. I think it's correct to applaud the job that Todd Bowles has done there. I said back to back, but you're right. 3 straight division titles, getting to the playoffs, being the best in that division. And this is a team that dealt with a ton of injuries over the course of this season on both sides of the ball, really. But at the same time, if you're a frustrated Bucs fan, I can understand the angst of having a conservative coach, especially in a game like this where you're watching the opposing coaching staff cut their quarterback loose and let Jayden Daniels sort of let it all hang out. I get it if you don't feel like you're going to reach your ceiling under this regime, but I also think it feels like a bit of a knee-jerk reaction to fire a coaching staff that's seen so much success here.
Yeah, and again, I think Bowles will be back again. If they miss the playoffs next year, he could be in trouble. It could be that simple. It's that short a leash. I think expectations will still be high for Tampa. They're going to have a tough schedule. Their first place schedule has them playing really tough teams. I mean, they're going to have Detroit. They're going to have Philadelphia. They're going to have Houston as the 3 games they get for finishing first. It's not easy at all. But they had that this year, and they still won the division when Atlanta had a much easier schedule and kind of floundered down the stretch and gave it back to them. So, yeah, like I said, to lose in the first round, kind of like 2 years ago when they did this with Brady, I think it definitely casts a pall over things. You end the season on a downturn. You lost at home in the playoffs as a favorite to a team you beat in the regular season. So I think the expectations going into the night were optimistic. I think there was at one point today, the Bucs thought they might have a second home game in the playoffs. So to be done and have it over with, especially on a game where, again, one mistake, one call, one decision that goes another way, it's a different outcome potentially. The clock management has been a gripe of most Bulls critics. They didn't. I mean, it's one of those where if they can't stop Washington in the final count of minutes, it doesn't matter how many timeouts you take or don't take. But they could have called the timeout at 2:30 and had another play before the 2-minute warning. They could have done more to kind of force the decisions on going for it. When it's 3rd and 2 with 55 seconds left, you can make a real case for, hey, if Jayden Daniels gets a first down, don't tackle him. Let him go score a touchdown. That way you have 50 seconds to answer and score a touchdown and go to overtime, as opposed to the inevitable, it's a short field goal. If they don't miss it, you lose. And I mean, it was a doink, like you said. So it came down to inches on the field goal, but you've kind of lost control of the game at that point.
It's a funny thought because, I mean, if you're a Bucs fan and you feel like you're in purgatory, I get it, because this is a team that's good enough to make the playoffs, maybe win a playoff game. They did last year. Does feel like they're a ways away from making a true run back to the Super Bowl like we saw with Tom Brady. But if you're a Commanders fan listening to this, you're saying, spare me the pity party, because we just won our first playoff game since 2005. So it can be a hell of a lot worse, as evidenced by what Washington has been through. Very exciting for them, man. First playoff win since 2005. I saw this right before we started recording. Jayden Daniels, just the second ever quarterback to engineer a road playoff win without a turnover or a punt. The only other guy who's ever done that, Peyton Manning in 2003, like some really rare company that this kid is keeping. And Greg, you just watched it play out. I mean, I'm not asking for a prediction, but it's exciting to think that this guy is not going to be fazed by what's waiting for him in Detroit at all.
Absolutely. I mean, again, it's a more potent offense. It's a better defense, a tougher place to play on the road. But he has that quality about him where if it's a tight game late, you don't want to be the team that's giving him the ball with the game on the line. 5 games in a row, they've won on the last play. You can't get more nail-biting, excitingly good than that. And it has them where they are. I mean, you think about a team that had lost 3 games in a row, around Thanksgiving, everyone's talking about the cliff and the offense hitting a wall and teams figuring them out. And they haven't. I mean, they've come back without really much of a traditional running game. Jayden Daniels led this team in rushing, went over 250 yards, had 2 touchdowns, made plays the whole night to get it done. It'll be fun to see a tougher environment, but definitely a game where he could do it again in Detroit if things go his way.
We had to get 5 games into wild card weekend before we got a truly exciting finish, but the night game definitely delivered. Great call by the NFL putting Commanders Bucs in the night slot. And Greg, thank you so much for walking us through it, man. I appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks again for having me, Dave. Have a good night.
You too.